All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Brian Robertson, manager of supply resource planning with Cascade, and this is our targeted technical advisory group meeting number 3. And we will be focusing on avoided costs today. Just so everyone knows, this meeting is recorded and transcribed, and will be posted on our IRP web pages once we get the minutes done. So we'll go ahead and get started. Just a reminder, we're focusing on methodology here, and actually in the new Oregon rules, I will bring this up. We won't be making changes to the avoided costs through the IRP process. Those will be done through UM 1893, but we want to present the methodology to the Oregon IRP stakeholders. If you have any feedback, please let us know. What we'll do is we'll bring any ideas or changes you'd like to see to the avoided costs to the UM 1893 docket. We have meetings through that docket, and we can recommend changes through that docket. So we'll have a quick safety moment. We'll go through the avoided cost methodology. Washington and Oregon are very similar, so we have one presentation for both. And then we'll open it up for feedback, and then we'll discuss the remainder of the IRP timeline and next steps. Just a reminder, please feel free to interrupt at any point, put your hand up, put something in the chat. You can also come off mute and interrupt me if you have a question at any point. You don't have to wait till the end to ask questions. All right, so we'll do a quick safety moment. It is getting warmer outside. I know people are probably starting to do some grilling. So here's some safety ideas on grilling. Make sure you keep it away from the building. That way, if the grill goes up in flames, it doesn't catch your building on fire and make things much worse. Make sure the grill is on level surface and stable ground. Keep it clean. That is very important. You'll get some pretty nasty grease fires if you don't get it cleaned up. Make sure you take care when lighting the grill. Keep children and pets away from the grilling area. That way they don't knock it over. The grill's very hot, so they don't get burnt. And then always be ready to put the fire out, and do not use water. Make sure you have a fire extinguisher. Everyone should have one for their house. Make sure it's in a reasonable location while you're grilling. And then practice good food safety. Make sure you understand what temperature your food needs to be before you serve it. Okay, so we'll jump into avoided cost methodology and calculation. So as part of the IRP process, Cascade produces a 24-year price forecast. So we forecast out to 2050 and 45 years of avoided cost. And what the avoided cost is estimated cost to serve the next unit of demand with a supply side resource option at a point in time. So what this represents is the cost, including environmental impacts, that could be avoided through energy conservation. So the avoided cost forecast can be used as a guideline for comparing energy conservation with the cost of environmental impacts, acquiring and transporting natural gas to meet demand. So essentially, the avoided cost is how much does it cost to serve a customer 1 unit of gas, and then this avoided cost is used to determine what could be cost effective on the energy efficiency side to offset that unit of demand in a cost effective manner. So for the 2027 IRP, we'll continue to use information learned from prior IRPs. So a lot of this information may look familiar. This is a very similar methodology. We've been building off of it for several IRPs through recommendations, through suggested edits, through conversations throughout the tag meetings. So if you've seen something in another utilities avoided costs that we are not including, please feel free to mention it, and we'll take a look at it. The various elements of the avoided costs have been reconsidered with regards to emission reduction goals. And then the company produces an expected avoided cost based on peak day, and in the case of distribution system costs, the peak hour. So here's the formula for the avoided cost. And we're going to dive into each of these. So I'm just going to very high level talk about introduce what they are. So the avoid cost nominal, that's what we're trying to calculate. And if you want to put it into real dollars, you just apply the avoided cost divided by 1 plus the discount rate. And then the exponential to that is the number of years from the base year. So if we're looking at 2028 and the base year is 2026, the years would be 2 there. So then we have the TCV, so that is the variable transportation cost. Then we have the fixed transportation cost when avoidable. We have the variable storage costs that's included, the commodity costs. And when I say included, I just mean considered. So some of these may have a value of 0 if they are not included, or if we don't have a calculation for those. CC is the commodity cost, so the cost to purchase upstream supply. The environmental compliance cost, so the cost to offset the environmental part of the traditional supply. Distribution system costs, risk premium, and then at the very end, you multiply by the environmental adder as recommended by the Northwest Power and Conservation Council. Are there any questions so far? Yeah, Adam?
Thanks, Brian. So when we're talking about distribution system costs, and I guess, yeah, really distribution system costs, I guess for my question is that the cost to maintain the system in its existing state, or would it be the cost to expand the distribution system to serve that one additional unit of energy?
Yeah, so the latter, it's the cost for growth projects.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So transportation costs, what are these? So the variable transportation and fixed transportation costs would be pulled directly from the major pipelines that Cascade utilizes. So for example, Northwest Pike, GTN, Enbridge, Ruby. So sometimes we have rate pancakes. So if we purchase gas from Nova, so we have to transport that on Nova, then we transport it on Foothills, and we transport it on GTN. So sometimes those rates are pancaked. So we consider all those different costs. Upstream transportation costs can be broken out into 2 different elements: fixed costs and variable costs. Fixed costs are reservation costs. So the way to think about that is like you're paying rent on the pipeline. Whether you use it or you don't, you have to pay for that reservation cost. In previous IRPs, we did not consider the fixed cost to be avoidable. However, with growth being relatively flat, we are considering including fixed costs in the avoided cost. This is something that we're seeking feedback on. So if there's anyone that says if you think yes, that should be included, we'll take that into consideration. If you think no, it shouldn't be included, fixed transportation is too difficult to avoid, please let us know. We'll also take that into consideration. We're Still, we haven't decided which way we're going to go on that, but we wanted to throw that out there. Variable costs are paid when gas flows on the upstream pipeline. These are very much avoidable costs. So if we can avoid flowing gas, so the variable cost is when you actually flow the gas. So you pay rent on the pipeline, and then you pay to use it to flow gas on it. So that's the variable cost. We have different rates for different upstream pipelines. Since we're concerned with the marginal cost of the next term that flows, we take an average of these pipeline variable rates, since it's not known which pipeline we would be avoiding the therm on. Fixed costs on proposed incremental upstream transportation are considered avoidable costs and can be part of the final calculation. So this is like due to growth, can we avoid having to do an upstream pipeline expansion through energy efficiency? So storage costs are only captured if there's an avoidable future storage. An example of this would be an on-system storage facility that is utilized to serve peak day demand. For our system, we only have off-system storage, and our off-system storage, it provides a net positive benefit to customers. So we utilize it for price arbitrage, flexibility of the system. So being able to, when there's operational flow orders and things like that, we're able to utilize the storage as a net positive to customers to keep costs low. So we don't really find storage costs to be an avoidable cost. So this is an example of something that's included in the model, in the formula that you saw 2 slides ago, but it's currently set at 0 because we see it as a net positive. So commodity costs. So the avoided commodity cost approach is intended to represent the marginal cost of procuring physical gas supply. This is captured through our 24-year price forecasts, which reflects expected market-based commodity costs. In past IRPs, there were questions. So, for example, if we were buying RNG for environmental compliance costs, it's important to remember that we're separating the purchase for the gas molecule and the environmental piece of the RNG. And so that environmental piece is captured in the environmental compliance cost, which is the next slide. So for Washington, Cascade is including the social cost of carbon with 2.5% discount rate, adjusted to real 2026 dollars. This is in accordance with RCW 80-28-395, which requires the social cost of carbon to value cost of greenhouse gas emissions. We also include the company's marginal cost to meet Climate Commitment Act and Climate Protection Programs, so the CCA in Washington and the CPP in Oregon. So for example, the projected cost of CCA allowances in Washington will likely be included as the reference case. And then in Oregon, it'll likely be a renewable thermal credit, just based on what we're seeing as the least cost resource to meet the CCA and the CPP. Are there any questions? I've been kind of cruising through this, so I wanted to pause for a second, let people digest the last couple of slides. Yeah, Byron.
Good morning. I guess I have a question about how like the marginal rate of CCA is considered. Like, would you consider, like, let's say that if the company participates in hypothetically like 2 auctions a year, and let's say that the auctions resolve in two different market clearing prices for allowances, would the assumption be that the higher of the two is the marginal in terms of like what's saved for like what the avoided cost would be?
Yes, yeah, that would be correct. So what we do include in the what we would include for the avoided cost, since it's projected, is we have an allowance forecast. And I don't have anything for the 2027 IRP, but in the previous IRP, our price forecast, or the CCA allowance forecast, was essentially the price ceiling units. And to go back on that, we all to expand on it, in towards the end we have a slide on scenarios, and so I'll touch base on different scenarios around the avoided costs, because we haven't really talked about scenarios with the resource integration part yet, but that will impact the avoided cost. So I want to talk a little bit about scenarios to the avoided cost. So there will be a little bit more information, especially around environmental compliance costs and scenario modeling. Okay, so we're going to jump into distribution system costs, and I'm actually going to invite Kirthan, who's been with the company for only a month, but he's been digging into the avoided costs and will be presenting on the distribution system cost portion of the avoided cost.
Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
All right. Awesome. So yeah, like Brian said, I'll be talking a little bit about the methodology of distribution system costs. So Cascade's distribution cost system cost calculation looks at forecasted capital expenses related only to growth, like was mentioned before, and then uses the company's load growth forecast to translate these costs into a per therm basis. So kind of the name of the methodology that we use, we call it a deferred valuation. So what that means is that, it's important to recognize that energy efficiency may not be able to fully eliminate the need for distribution system enhancement. It can defer the need for these enhancements to a later year. But because of the economic principle of the time value of money, this deferral does have value, and that value is the avoided distribution system cost. So once we kind of get that deferred value, we then multiply that by the ratio of peak day demand to an average day's demand to get the impact on peak day. And then because distribution systems specifically rely a lot on peak hour as well, that number is then multiplied by the ratio of peak hour demand to that day's average hourly demand. Next slide, please. And then, so this is just kind of talking a little bit about, this is a very simple kind of capacity model. So as you can see, this is just kind of showing that gray line, that's the initial capacity, and the green line is showing the forecast for a peak event, in this case, a peak day load. And as you can see, next slide, there reaches a point where the peak load is just too much for the capacity to handle, and that's called the point of deficit. Now, there are some ways in which we can kind of defer or push that point of deficit out, like next slide. Like for example, we can upgrade the capacity. So that's kind of where you're getting the growth projects that we were talking about that we're including with this. So that can push out your point of deficit further out in time. Next slide, please. And then there's also projects related to energy efficiency, which can reduce demand because you're getting the same result or similar results using significantly less natural gas. So both those are options in which you can delay the point of deficit as well. Next slide. And so the previous graph was kind of showing a faster growth forecast for kind of slower usage growth forecasts, like shown in this one. There's a lot more opportunities as well in which you can delay the point of deficit out even further. Any questions on any of that? Okay. Awesome. Well, yeah. And then, oh yeah, and then this is just kind of talking a little bit about more about the deferred valuation. So as you can see, in terms of nominal dollars, if you push out the projects, that the cost does go up when you look at it that way. But then because we're using the time value of money, next slide, you can see in terms of like that real discounted dollars that the actual like real price is actually becomes significantly lower. And next slide. So we're kind of measuring that present value of deferral. So that shows so that's just the difference between the delayed deficit and then the point of deficit. And so that's kind of what we're trying to measure here. Yeah. Any questions? All
Okay,
right.
I'm not seeing any questions. Thanks, Kirthan.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to jump into risk premium. So Cascade defines risk premium as the difference between the impacts of potential extreme upward price movements versus that of an extreme downward price movement. Due to log normal nature of stochastic gas prices, the risk presented from rising prices will typically exceed that of falling prices. And then we apply a risk adjusted price calculation because we want to rely a little bit more on our expected or deterministic price rather than the Monte Carlo stochastic pricing. So there's a little bit of a risk adjustment to the price. And then we also include a risk premium to commodity costs of carbon compliance. So the idea here for risk premium is the energy efficiency reduces demand. And so what it does is it reduces your exposure to price volatility. So there's a level of certainty around energy efficiency that has some value. So here's a quick look. The green is a normal distribution where you see the average price right there in the middle. And then half of the in a normal distribution, half of the prices would fall below that average and half of them would fall above it. Well, when you look at log normal distribution, which is what prices generally follow, is you're more stacked on that lower end, and then you're exposed to that very high side. So the prices could get really high, really extreme. Through energy efficiency, you reduce your exposure to that high side. So here's another look. This is through stochastic Sumas pricing. I think we did 10,000 draws here, and you can see that there's a little bit of a normal distribution, or sorry, log normal distribution. The deterministic price was $5.36, where the average price of the first percentile and the 99th percentile was $6.07. And so that delta right there is what we would include as the stochastic risk premium. So to apply a risk adjustment to this, what we would do is we would take the deterministic price, multiply it by 75%. So we give it 3/4 the weight, and then we give the stochastic risk premium 25% weight, and then we subtract the deterministic price. And then this gives us a good blend of deterministic and stochastic pricing for the risk adjustment risk premium. And so this is, again, this is done on the commodity cost, and then this is also done on the environmental cost. So what we do is we do stochastic pricing on all of our low carbon alternative fuels. We'll do stochastic pricing on our allowances, and we'll calculate a risk premium. Then we do stochastic pricing on our commodity costs. So we do a risk premium on all of those and apply it to the avoided cost. Just an example of what the avoid costs risk premium look like. It's pretty minimal. Oh, and I should add that if it is a negative value, we change it to 0. So you'll see some negative values there, but those get adjusted to 0 in the end. And you can see it's about, when combining the environmental piece and the commodity piece, it's about 10 cents a therm up to about 35 cents a therm added to the avoided cost. So the environmental adder, this is applied to all elements of the avoided cost. So again, at the very end, we take 10%, so 1.1, and multiply it by the other costs. And this is based on the Pacific Northwest Electric Power Planning and Conservation Act. Then it's been widely, it was adopted on the electric side first, but it's widely used on the gas side as well. So we also consider Cascade's upstream emission rates, so emissions from fugitive methane. So what we'll do is we calculate the upstream emissions rate and the customer emissions rate, and we add those together to get the emissions rate total. So what we consider is we consider the methane, so the percent of CH4 per unit of natural gas, the upstream emissions loss factor. So we've used reports to gather the loss rate for Canadian gas and US gas, and then we multiply that by the percent of where we get the gas from. So you can see there we get about 65% from Canada and about 35% from the US. And then we also include so we multiply those together, and that gives us the upstream emissions rate. And then we convert it using a global warming potential. And currently we have that set at 25. And we'll present more on the numbers at the first tag meeting. But we wanted to provide the methodology here. And if anyone has feedback on, so these numbers are pretty close to what we'll likely use. If you have any feedback on the numbers themselves, please let us know. If you think there's a number off, we did do a initial review of this, and everything's been updated. Everything is the same, I believe, except we updated the global warming potential to 25 from the previous presentation. And then we convert end-use emissions rate for natural gas using our CFR mandatory GHG reporting, 2 grams per MMBTU. And then we add the upstream emissions and the customer emissions rate, so the end-use emissions rate, to get our total emissions rate for the upstream side. Are there any questions this far? I'm not seeing any questions. We'll continue on. So scenarios. So typically what we've done is we include scenarios around low reference case and high growth, around customer count avoided costs. So we plan on doing something similar, but we'll also, on the Washington side, what we're going to do, and I think this is a requirement, and I don't know if Caleb or Jody are on the call, but this is a requirement in the upcoming CPA as well. But we plan on including a scenario where we align our emissions to the state emission goals. And so that'll have an impact on the avoided cost. And this will have an impact on the avoided cost in both states, because the more low carbon alternative fuels needed in Washington, that means the less there is available in Oregon. So there will be an impact in both states. If you're curious what the alignment to state emission goals looks like, we did include a scenario in the 2025 Washington IRP. And so if anyone wants to take a look at that IRP, it's out on our webpage, on the Washington side. And in the resource integration, we talk a little bit about what that looks like. If there's any feedback on other scenarios that you'd like to see, please let us know. Again, we're not locking down the avoided costs today. We likely won't lock down the avoided costs until about October. So please let us know. The sooner we know, the more time we have to implement these changes. So conclusion, yeah, so we appreciate any feedback related to elements. And like I had mentioned, we plan to provide the avoided cost figures to the company's energy efficiency team around the first full Tag 1 meeting. And then they'll be providing a conservation potential assessment based on these inputs. So this will be provided to the Washington, will be provided to our internal energy efficiency team with Caleb and Jody. And then the Oregon avoided costs will be provided to ETO. So I'll open it up for any feedback. This could be positive feedback, changes, suggestions, thoughts, feedback on the presentation, anything.
Thank you. This was very clear.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Okay, we'll continue on. So just looking at the remainder of the 2027 IRP schedule, we have a targeted tag. We have 5 more targeted tags, focusing on energy efficiency, equity in the IRP, CCA, CPP compliance modeling, distribution system planning, and resource integration. So again, these are focusing on methodology around the different aspects of the IRP. They are in 3-week increments. So the next one will be in 3 weeks. After the targeted tags are complete, we will be running our longer tag meetings. This will include more information, but it also include actual value. So we'll have so for example, in the first IRP meeting or first full tag meeting, we'll present what our customer forecast and demand forecast is. We'll present what the methodology at a high level again. Any feedback that we got from the first targeted tag. So if you have any feedback from the first targeted tag, please let us know. If you want those to be implemented for the Tag 1 meeting. And then I think avoided costs will be presented. We have it listed in tag 2, but it should be tag 1. So I'll update that. And then tag 2 will take place, I think, about 6 weeks later in November. And then we plan on sending a draft out. What we'll do is we'll send the draft out on like the first 6 to 7 chapters. And then we'll ask for comments. And then what we'll do is we'll have a tag 3 on resource integration. I believe distribution system planning is actually going to be on tag 3. And then after that, we'll have a final draft. So that'll be all of the chapters. You'll see the changes made from the first draft and edits and suggestions sent back from that first draft. Those should be included in the final draft, along with the final chapters. And then we ask for comments by April 9th. What we'll do is we have a date set for a tag 4 if needed. If we get feedback during the final draft that says, hey, we're not fully understanding this, can you put together a presentation on this? We're more than happy to do that. We want to be very flexible. And then once we complete the tag 4, we'll aim to have the final completed by May 19th. That way we can get print started and things like that. And then we'll file the final on May 21st in both states. Any questions on the timeline? Okay, so just a reminder, you can contact us at irp@cngc.com. If you have, this is for people on the call and anyone who's recording, if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to set up one-on-one calls. If you would prefer just sending questions over via email, I'm happy to answer them that way. We're very open. We want to be transparent, and we're happy to meet with people. And the IRP process is here to be educational, and we look forward to getting feedback as well, as we're constantly trying to learn and improve our models. Tag 4 will be on energy efficiency, and that's scheduled for July 1st. And I'll open it up. We have about 40 to 45 minutes of material. We like to leave it open at the end for any questions. Let's see there. Okay. So I'll leave it open 10, 20 seconds. If I don't see anything, we'll let people go.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, great cheers, Brian. Thanks, you.
Yep. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Brian, I guess I was wondering for this upcoming July 1st meeting, is there anything from Energy Trust that you're looking for us to, review or provide, or seeing that the topic's energy efficiency? Just wanted to check in about that upcoming tag meeting.
Yeah, let's touch base on that.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
All right, thank you.